Good afternoon, everybody. Just a note up at the top. I think you probably know November marks National Veterans and Military Families Month, when we take some time to recognize and celebrate military families and the important role that they play in supporting the force. Our nation's service members do not serve alone. Alongside them are the dedicated members of their families whose commitment and resolve absolutely strengthen our nation and our ability to defend this nation. Our military families are therefore critical, and the Department of Defense recognizes the important role they play in the lives of our service members and our transitioning veterans, as well as the individual achievements that they have accomplished. For that reason and many more, we are grateful for all that they have done and continue to do to support those who keep the nation safe. And I know many of you who have covered the building for a long, long time have seen it firsthand, just how absolutely critical our families are to our ability to get the job done. So I'm sure you share our appreciation for military families. With that, Lita.
John, the vaccine deadlines are obviously pretty much upon you. Can you, the other day you said that obviously any decisions on vaccine exemptions or refusals is up to the services, but is there a broader concern across the Defense Department that you could get into situations where there are unequal punishments or unequal actions taken against service members based on commanders' individual actions? And then do you also have any updated numbers?
So on the first question, I mean, I think the Secretary's been very clear with the leaders of the military departments that he wants them to execute the mandate with a sense of compassion and understanding. And it's his expectation as well, and I know he's made this clear to them, that he knows, as a former commander himself, that leaders have a range of tools available to them to help troops make the right decisions for themselves, for their units, for their families, short of using the Uniform Code of Military Justice, therefore short of punitive measures. And I think that remains his expectation today, that commanders will do that. But clearly, it's a lawful order. And so he also trusts that commanders will ultimately do what they need to do for the readiness of their unit. And if that comes to doing something of a punitive nature, they certainly have that right and that authority. It's just that the Secretary wants them to exhaust other measures before having to do that. Now, as for uniformity, I mean, the reason the UCMJ is set up the way it is so that there is a menu of options for how commanders can deal with offenses against the UCMJ for a violation of lawful orders. And each service, each unit within each service has a different set of operational requirements and demands, deployment schedules, op tempo, and the Secretary very much doesn't want to be in the business of telling commanders at local levels exactly how, if they have to resolve themselves to using administrative or punitive measure, that how exactly they should do that, because they're the ones who they've been placed in a position of command. That's a position of trust and confidence, and he wants to respect that trust and confidence of commanders to do what they believe is in the best interest of their unit and frankly with the individual member. So can we promise you that there'll be absolute uniformity across the board? No. And we wouldn't want to promise that, because it wouldn't be the same way we handle orders violations for other offenses as well. But again, I want to go back to the beginning, which is his expectation that this mandate will be handled in a compassionate way and an understanding way, and that due counseling will be provided both from a medical perspective and from a leadership perspective to members who are declining to take the vaccine. Now, I would tell you that as of today, 97% of the active duty force has had at least one dose. This would include 99% of active duty sailors, and with active airmen closely behind at around 97%. And the Marine Corps is at 93% with one dose, and the Army also is in the 90th percentile. So just in terms of first dosage, there's been a lot more progress, and we continue to see the men and women of the force doing the right thing. which is getting vaccinated.
Well, just as a follow-up, this is also going to be an issue with civilians. Has there been additional guidance put out on civilians about how, who's going to be the deciding authority and how is this going to happen for military commanders who have civilians working for them?
That's a great question, and we're still working on some additional implementing guidance for the civilian workforce, and we know we owe that to commanders, and I think you'll be seeing more guidance coming out from the leadership here at the Pentagon very, very soon on that. That's a fair question, though. Megan.
Has there been any discussion of updating the vaccine mandate to include boosters? Is the Defense Health Agency putting out guidance for service members about boosters, or is it just are boosters available, as they would be for anybody else?
I don't have a good answer for you on that, Megan. I'd point you to DHA if they do, but I'm not aware of any imminent guidance right now coming out specifically about boosters. But obviously, we continue to encourage those who qualify for them and need them to get booster shots. Abraham, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have two questions, John. First off, does the Secretary believe that unvaccinated service members are deployable? And then I have another question.
The Secretary will delegate that specific decision down to commanders at the appropriate level. Because when you say deployable, what does that mean? They're different units, different services, define deployments differently. And so he wants to let the services manage that decision-making process for themselves and commanders specifically. Obviously, though, he wants as much of the force as possible vaccinated, because he still believes that a vaccinated force is a more ready force.
And a separate question. Does Secretary Austin have any kind of reaction to the meeting between President Biden and Turkish President Erdogan, where they discussed F-16 acquisition and getting kicked out of the F-35 program?
Yeah, well, as you know, Turkey was removed from the F-35 program back in July of 2019 following their acceptance of the S-400 air and missile defense system. And the Department of Defense remains in consultation with Turkey to address remaining issues resulting from their removal from the program, with initial discussions, I think we talked about this last week, occurring in Ankara just on the 27th of October. And then just in terms of the F-16s as a matter of policy, and I think you know this, Abraham, those issues, foreign military sales issues, are conducted by the Department of State. The Department of Defense won't comment or speculate about potential FMS going forward. Sylvie.
I have two questions too. First, can you confirm that Russian troops are building up at the Ukrainian border?
What I can tell you is that we're aware of public reports of unusual Russian military activity near Ukraine, and we're going to continue to consult with allies and partners on this issue. I can't speak for Russian intentions, but we are certainly monitoring the region closely, as we always do, Sylvie. And as we've said before, any escalatory or aggressive actions would be of great concern to the United States. We continue to support de-escalation in the region and a diplomatic resolution to the conflict in eastern Ukraine. And you heard the Secretary address that exact issue when we were over there just a week or so ago.
And my second question is about the meeting that President Biden and President Macron had last week, and there was a statement, a common statement at the end. And in this statement, it's said that the U.S. has committed additional assets in the Sahel to support counter-terrorism efforts led by France. What kind of additional assets? Is it troops or is it equipment?
So actually, the Secretary and his French counterpart, Minister Parley, talked about the Sahel as one of many things they talked about when they met on the sidelines of the Defense Ministerial in Brussels a week or so ago. And we have, in fact, committed to continuing to support French operations in the Sahel, operations which we believe are vital to helping to deal with the terrorism threat in that part of the world. I don't have any announcements today, nor am I going to get into specifics about what those assets are, but I would disabuse you of the notion that it's all about hardware. When we're talking about helping our French allies in that part of the world, yes, there will be some material support, some of that in the realm of helping them with ISR, but it also will involve some additional training and that kind of thing. So it's not all about just additional hardware. I know when we see the word assets, that's what we tend to think, but it's really more comprehensive than that. And it's really a continuation of the kinds of things that we've been already doing to help the French operation there.
No troops.
I don't have any announcements to make today with respect to what that support will materialize, but at this time, it's really more about helping them in a comprehensive way. I don't have any troop announcements to speak to. Yeah, Rio.
Thank you. I want to follow up about Kirby's question about the U.S.-France joint statement. The statement also says the U.S. will increase the support and material contribution to the Europe's deployment of military assets to the Indo-Pacific region. So what support and material contribution will the U.S. increase to help them deploy warships or aircraft to the region?
Yeah, again, I think it's going to be a range of support that we can help provide over time, and it's going to be a function of bilateral discussions that we have with the French. We know they have significant and real security interest in the Indo-Pacific. For instance, we supported France's Rafale deployment across the region back in July, which we were very proud to do. And we have a long history of mill-to-mill cooperation, and I think you're just going to see that continue to mature as we go forward. Okay? Yeah.
John, on the meeting in Ankara, could you just give us more insight actually into this meeting? What are the points of discussion? What is the dispute currently between Turkey and the United States in that?
I would characterize it as a dispute. I mean, we had a discussion back in late October, just a week or so ago, about the process of, the decision, the removal, which is done, and sort of what does that mean bilaterally for us going forward. So it was a very productive discussion. It wasn't anything other than professional in tone. Turkey remains a valuable NATO ally with whom we share lots of common interests, and we want to continue to make sure that, from an alliance perspective, that we can continue to work with Turkey on shared security interests going forward. But the meeting was really about the F-35 program and the removal process itself. It doesn't mean that bilaterally we aren't going to still look for ways to work closely with Turkey.
And on that point, I know you won't talk about the Turkish request for F-16s, but Turkey is putting a discourse saying that actually this request also is not only important for the Turkish national security, but also the security and capability of NATO. Do you think that a viable Turkish Air Force should be there for NATO?
Again, I'm not going to get to the specifics of potential foreign military sales. That's the realm of the State Department, and it would be inappropriate for us to talk about. But I will go back to what I said before. They are a valued and an important NATO ally, and in the context of our alliance, and quite frankly, in the context of our bilateral security relationship, it's important to continue to have discussions with Turkey about how to move forward, and we're going to do that. But I'm not going to speculate one way or the other about the F-16s.
Just one last question. In Syria, Russians have deployed Su-35s to Qamishli, that is eastern Syria, close to the U.S. forces. Are you concerned about that, or have you discussed with Russians?
I can't speak for Russian deployments inside Syria. As you know, we have a deconfliction channel with the Russians, which does work, and we do use it to make sure that there isn't miscalculation and unintended consequences, and we're going to continue to use that deconfliction channel. Courtney?
So if about 3% of the Air Force hasn't been vaccinated yet as of this morning, that rough math is about 10,000, if I'm not mistaken. So what happens tomorrow morning to those 10,000 when they show up at work? Are they already, are some people already in counseling? Does some sort of process already begin right away to get them to, I mean, because presumably many of them already have made clear that they don't want to get vaccinated, and may already have had some sort of a counseling. So what happened? I mean, I know it's a small percentage, but it's a lot of people.
I'm not disputing your math, Court, but that's really a better question put to the Air Force. Again, the Secretary trusts the military departments to deal with this mandatory vaccine in the way they deem best fit. And I think the Air Force has received and has granted some exemptions administratively and from a medical perspective. So some of that number that is definitely going to be inside approved exemptions. The rest of them, again, I don't know what the exact figures will be, but the Air Force is the best place to go in terms of what their plans are post the deadline.
What qualifies as an administrative exemption?
Sometimes it could be somebody who they plan on retiring in a month or so, or they're going to separate. That could be an administrative exemption.
What about religious? Does that fall under administrative? And have any religious exemptions been granted?
I'm not going to speak for the Air Force and their specific.
Are you aware of any religious exemptions?
I do not have direct knowledge of religious exemptions from the services. Again, I'd point you back to them. They handle that process. My understanding is that in some of the services, they do count religious exemptions as part of administrative exemptions, but it's not uniform across the board. So I'd point you back to the services specifically for that. Pierre.
I have a couple questions. One, yesterday the White House, Sunday afternoon, put out an executive order that gives the Undersecretary for Acquisition and Sustainment release authority from the National Defense Stockpile. I thought they already had that authority. Can you give a sense of whether this was a turn of the screw or some significant executive?
I wouldn't describe it as a turn of the screw. I think it's a decision that the president felt was important to make, given the supply chain problems that we have in the country.
What was the system before Sunday, though, in terms of the way national stockpile materials were released?
I'm going to take that question, Tony, because I don't know exactly how this is the defense stockpile, national defense stockpile, not the strategic stockpile, which deals with medical things. This is really about rare earths, minerals, and that kind of thing. So let me take that question for you, because I don't want to guess on exactly what the process was before the EO.
I have a second question. General Hyten last Thursday before the Defense Writers Group bemoaned the classification system. He says we're going to have to change the classification structure that we have, not to declassify everything, that would be foolish, but it's so highly classified now that you can't talk about anything, and that's a mistake. What's your reaction as someone who's been in this building on and off for like 20 years?
I think achieving the proper balance between operational security, protecting information of a national security nature, and the absolute commensurate requirement to be as transparent with you and with the American people as possible is a balance we're trying to strike every day. There's absolutely no question that there's times when we don't get that balance right, when we could be more transparent in some cases than we are. I mean, I'm not going to stand up here and say that we're always as far forward leaning as we should be. But it is, to be fair, it's a struggle that we're constantly dealing with. This balance between OPSEC and transparency.
Well, how successful have you been since you've been in office, pushing back, striking the balance more on the side of transparency than suppression?
I mean, I can't speak for every office here in the Pentagon, Tony. Me personally, I mean, I can tell you that I certainly do the best I can here from the podium, and the Secretary's guidance is to be as forward-leaning as we can be. But again, I also have a commensurate requirement to protect information of a national security nature, and so we do that. I mean, I'm sure that if I went back after today's briefing and your question and graded myself, that I would not be getting an A+. I admit that. But I can tell you that we constantly try to be as forward-leaning and as open, as transparent as we can be.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, hang on just a second. I need to get to the phones, and then Nancy, I'll come to you, and then over to you. Jeff Schogel, I think you're at the top of the list here today.
Thank you very much, and thank you to your staff for being so helpful on the question of DVIDs taking down pictures and videos from Afghanistan. I was wondering if you could address why the Defense Department didn't publicly announce when it took down so many pictures and images from Afghanistan, why it was doing so and the criteria it used in order to remove those images.
Questions, Jeff. So let me level set for everybody in case you don't understand what Jeff is asking about. Throughout the course of the evacuation in August and then well into September, and this gets to Jeff's question of why we didn't announce. What we did was, in order to protect the identities of Afghans who worked for us and Afghans at the time we were still trying to get out of the country, and frankly still are today, we did not delete. But we took off publicly accessible platforms and archived for future republication at a later date. We removed thousands of still imagery and videos that would show the faces or any other identifiable information about many of the Afghans that we have worked for and we've supported and who have supported us over the last 20 years. It was a mammoth undertaking. And it took us a long time, almost 2 months. And the reason why I didn't announce it was because we were in the middle of it. And it wouldn't make much sense to tell the world that we were archiving these images before we were done archiving them. And because it is still an ongoing effort, frankly, this is not the kind of thing that I wanted to be able or have to talk about because we are still trying to get many of these Afghans out of the country. So we did it out of an abundance of caution, out of respect for the obligation that we have to these individuals and to their families. And at the right time, when it's appropriate, we will absolutely republish those images. They haven't gone anywhere. They're archived. They're safe and sound. And we'll put them back in the public domain when we think it's the right time to do that. Nancy.
A couple of clarifying questions and then a question I wanted to ask you. On Tony's question about the executive order, can you find out for us if there's any limitations in that, because the person who is delegated to do that is in an acting capacity, and I'm curious if that limits in any way her ability to carry out that order, and what the status is on naming someone in a permanent position?
I know of no limitations on acting officials to execute the CEO, none whatsoever. I don't have an update for you from a personnel announcement perspective. As I've said before, we understand the criticality of this position. The Secretary's certainly focused on making sure that we get the best talent here at the Pentagon. And when we have personnel announcements to make, we certainly will.
And then Jeff,
actually, in this case, the President will, but you get the point.
And then to Jeff's question, can you give us a sense of how many thousands were taken down? Was there a specific threat that led to this, and who made the determination of taking them down, the criteria for taking them down, and what would then allow for them to be republished?
There were approximately 124,000 photographs, still images, and about 17,000 videos that remain unpublished. I delegated, it was my decision, and I delegated it to the leadership at the Defense Media Activity to use their best judgment. My guidance was, I want any imagery that could be used to identify individuals and or family members over the last 20 years of war. I want it to be unpublished for a temporary period of time. And it is temporary, and it was done out of an abundance of caution.
It was not spurred by a specific threat or reference to any photos that used to target an Afghan?
We had reason enough to believe, Nancy, and you know this from covering the evacuation, that the Taliban were going we were concerned that they were going to seek out people who helped us over time, or relatives and families. And I think those concerns were valid, and we make no apology whatsoever for making this decision. I still believe it was the right thing to do. And at the right time, we'll absolutely republish them. This is nothing's been deleted from the record. It's simply being archived until we believe it's the appropriate time to put them back up.
And then I wanted to ask you about a statement that OSC put out on the 15th about a call between Dr. Colin Call and the head of the NGO for Mr. Amadi, who was killed on August 29th. In that statement, the OSC said that there was a commitment from this department to offering condolence payments, including and in working with the State Department to help support his family members who are interested in relocating to the United States. It's been about 2 weeks since that statement was released, and I was wondering if there was any update on either condolence payments or helping them leave if they choose to.
I don't have an update for you.
Can we get
We
an
are
update?
working closely with the State Department to both ends. If there is something to update you with, we will absolutely do that.
Can you give me a sense then, is there, one of the concerns that the families have expressed is because they've gotten so much attention that they're increasingly targeted or could be targeted by the Taliban. Is there a timeline with which the department hopes to either get payments or get them an answer on evacuation?
We're working through the timing of the ex gratia payment issue now, as a matter of fact. And as far as I know, the exact timing and delivery method has not been solidified. As for relocation, as you know, the Secretary fully supports that, and we've said that numerous times. And obviously, we're going to do everything we can to support the State Department as they try to effect the relocation of the family members.
Okay, if I could just make a request, if there's any update we could get on where it is in that process. You talked about timing. I really appreciate it.
If there's a tangible update to give you, I absolutely will. But I do not know that I have anything tangibly today to add to the discussion. Let's see, Jared Suba, our monitor.
Hi, Mr. Kirby. Thanks. I'm just wondering if there's a date set for the next round of dialogue with Turkish officials on this F-35 resolution.
None that I'm aware of, Jared, but you know what? We'll take the question. It's a fair one, and I'll see if we have anything to add. But I don't know that there's another discussion on the schedule. Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Fadi.
So there have been speculations about potential Turkish military operation against SDF forces in northern Syria. Today, Sputnik news agency had a report quoting unnamed source that basically proclaiming that the operation is going to happen on Tuesday. So my question is this: have you seen any movement on the ground that would indicate such an operation is imminent? Are you in touch with Turkish counterpart on potential operation, and what's the department position about such a military operation if it happens?
You're asking a lot of ifs there, Fadi. A lot of speculation on military operations that, beyond our control here at the Pentagon. So I don't have anything on these reports. And even if we did, I doubt that we would use the podium to speak specifically about what another nation-state military might or might not do operationally. Members of the Syrian Democratic Forces are our partners in the fight against ISIS in Syria. We take that partnership seriously. We continue to work with them specifically and solely on the ISIS threat in Syria, and it's our expectation that that kind of cooperation and those operations will continue. As for what the Turks might or might not do, I would suggest you talk to the folks in Ankara about that.
But would such an operation put U.S. soldiers in danger, or the cooperation with the SDF on ISIS? Would it?
You're suggesting that they're not in harm's way now? I mean, operating in Syria, helping the SDF against ISIS, because they very much are. And they take that very, very seriously. And just like anywhere else, our troops are involved in operations. They have the right of protection and self-defense, and they will absolutely, it's our expectation that they will execute that right and responsibility as appropriate. But I don't want to speculate about something that is in Sputnik news by an unnamed source. I just don't think that would be a valuable use of time today.
Well, we've seen statements coming out of Turkey basically threatening such a...
I'm just not using Sputnik news as a valid source of information, and I would suggest you don't either. I think these are questions that are fair, but probably better put to officials in Ankara.
Yeah, just to clarify my question, I wasn't suggesting that the U.S. troops are not in danger, but added danger if such an operation happens.
I think they're well aware of the dangers within which the environment they're operating. Pierre.
When asked about Iran yesterday, the Secretary of State did say that all options are on the table. Should we understand that the military option is an option for the president to use, and we are ready for it?
Our job is to make sure that the president always has options.
Does it mean that the military option is part of the options?
Our job is to provide the commander-in-chief options, Pierre, and I'm not going to go beyond that. Oren.
Two questions. Your decision to pull the video and the images, was that related or coordinated with the State Department's request?
Yes.
Okay.
It was, the decision was fully coordinated inside the interagency with the National Security Council staff and the State Department, absolutely, 100%. We made no secret of the fact that we felt this was the right thing to do.
And second question, at what point does the Secretary comment or confirm or acknowledge the Chinese hypersonic test? You keep saying there's a pacing challenge, and yet we've heard no confirmation of one of the latest examples that makes them the pacing challenge.
I have nothing to add to that today, Oren. Yeah.
Two questions. The first one is a follow-up on Tony's question. Does an overly strict classification system sometimes make it difficult for the Defense Department enterprise to acquire the most cutting-edge technology? Because it makes it hard to publish some of the requirements, for instance.
No. I mean, we can work, we have a long history of working with our defense industry colleagues, and that requires communications of a classified, sensitive nature, and we still are able to do that.
My second question is about the First Lady's visit earlier today to military support activity in Italy.
Naples. She was going to a DoD school. Yeah,
exactly. Could you talk a little bit about some of the unique challenges that the families living overseas might face?
Yeah, in fact, I myself was stationed at that base in Naples. I lived just a block away from that school where she's visiting. Look, overseas assignments, it would be easy to say that they're all hard, and there's a difficulty about that. There's no question about it. You're removed from your normal environment, and you're plopped down into a new culture, and you know, you still have a network of friends and colleagues that you can work with, and your kids can engage with and go to school with every day. But you're still in a foreign country, and there's lots of learning that's required for that. But I think anybody who has served overseas permanently, I mean, I'm not talking about deployments. I'm talking about permanently stationed overseas in a country of like Italy or Japan, South Korea, you know, an ally and a partner will tell you that there's an awful lot of reward too. To learn a new culture, to immerse yourself in a new environment, maybe learn a language, and really opens up your perspective on the importance of what it means to be in the armed forces of the United States. So, yeah, it can be stressful because you are, again, going to literally a foreign land, but boy, there's an awful lot of benefits too. And what the Secretary, and this gets to the thing I opened with today, what the Secretary wants to make sure is that we are staying mindful of the challenges and the stressors on our families here and abroad, and that we're addressing them as best we can. And so we're enormously grateful that the First Lady is taking time out of her busy agenda to visit with the DoD school at Naples, Italy, and having, again, been stationed there, and that was a while ago, but that is a fine educational institution, and I know that the teachers there who work, all our DoD teachers who work so incredibly hard, will be very grateful for her visit, as will the students and the families. Okay, we got one more. Tony?
The example of the temporarily pulling the videos and pictures and stills, is that an example of this balancing act between transparency the classification that you so eloquently talked about?
Thank you for the eloquent comment, but no, actually, I don't consider that so much a balance between classification and transparency. For us and for our interagency colleagues, this was very much about helping protect, as best we can, the identities of our Afghan friends and allies. It wasn't, I mean, the photographs were not classified, nor were the images. And they will get republished, absolutely. There have just been temporarily archived. So it's not really the same balance about classification and transparency. This was an abundance of caution that we felt was necessary in keeping with our obligation to protect the identities of our Afghan allies and partners. And again, when we don't feel that that need is there, then we will absolutely republish them. But it's not about classification, because they're unclassified images. They were up on divots for a long, long time, some of them for, you know, more than a decade. And they'll get back up there. We promise that. Okay, thanks everybody.